Good afternoon, members, officers and members of the public. Welcome to the Calderdale Council Planning Committee, Tuesday the 7th of July. And we have 3 items on today's agenda. I'll just go through the agenda items today. So, substitutes nominated for this meeting and apologies for absence.
Chair, Councillor Naeem is substituting for Councillor Sweeney, who has sent his apologies.
Okay, thank you. Members' interest. Do any members have any disclosable pecuniary interest or any other interest that they may have or that may prevent them from that may exclude them from voting on any items in this agenda? Didn't quite get that out right, did I? So I'll start that one again. Do any members have any disclosable pecuniary interest or any other interest they might have in relation to the items included on this agenda? There we go, that's better. And that's a no, good. Admission to the public. It is not recommended that the public be excluded from the meeting for the consideration of the items of business on this agenda. Minutes of the meeting, of the planning meeting held on the 16th of June to be approved. Do we have anyone? Councillor Hutchinson and Councillor Baines to second them. Okay, thank you. We have no withdrawn applications, do we? There's no withdrawn applications.
That's correct. No withdrawn applications, Chair.
Right. Fantastic. Okay. Okay. We shall go on to our first item, which is item number 20/00003/full, and it's land rear of 20 Clayhouse Lane, Greetland, Elland. Okay.
I'll just bring in Miss Parker.
Right, okay, thank you, Tilly.
Thank you.
The host has disabled screen sharing. Can the host enable the screen sharing, please?
There you go.
Okay. Right. Which officer is actually running this one? Richard?
Yes, sorry, I'm just...
Okay.
Can I just check that everybody can see the presentation?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, so the first slide sets out representations. So 4 letters of objection, 2 letters of support, and comments from Councillor Greenwood received, and the key issues. So this shows the location of the application site. So essentially it's to the rear of Rochdale Road, but access via Clayhouse Lane to the north. Members will note there's a sort of stepped footpath running along the side of the site. This is an aerial photograph, a few years old now, that just gives members an impression of the geography of the area. This is the existing site layout, so the footpath marked in pink, and the proposed site layout with the siting of the dwelling and the access off Clayhouse Lane. The proposed floor plans, proposed elevation, so this is the front elevation to Rochdale Road, the north elevation to the rear, and the side elevation sections through from number 20 above the site down to Rochdale Road, and the east elevation. This just shows the previously refused elevations. So obviously there has been a number of applications on this site previously. So this is looking down the public footpath, down what would be the access from the north. Looking at the site from the top of the public footpath, so down towards Rochdale Road. Then a view looking up from Rochdale Road. This is the footpath I've mentioned. You can see it running along, and this is the site itself, which would accommodate the proposed dwelling. Again, slight variation on that previous shot. And the final slide sets out again the objections and key issues, and the recommendation, which is to refuse for the reasons set out in the report. So they're reasons relating to highway safety and the visual impact of the development. Shall I stop screen sharing, or would members like me to go back to any slides at all?
I think Councillor Hutchinson.
Can I just ask for clarification of the parking arrangements? Because on the elevations, it suggests that parking is behind the housing, but on amended plans, it shows that area as a garden with parking elsewhere.
Thank you, Colin.
I think that might be one too. Is the highway officer in attendance?
Yes, Richard, I'm here now.
Good, Andrew. Andrew, could you respond to that one, please?
Yes, the parking is as shown there, the two spaces on the sort of area of land between the, as you can see, just off Clare House Lane. The problem, as we stated in our comments, is that there's actually not enough room there for two vehicles, and that's a very indicative. It's more of a sketch than a drawing. We've asked for a topographical survey. On-site measurements indicate that the cars would actually, if you look at, I don't know if you've got an image of the street, but it would actually project out onto the road. We need one at a street view level, really. Two cars parked parallel like that, there wouldn't be enough room to get through without blocking an adjacent employment unit and a residential property. So this is one of the reasons why we objected.
I mean, I could see that on the ground when I visited the site, but I just wanted clarification of what was being proposed. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we come out of screen sharing now, or do other members want to keep this on?
Excuse me.
Councillor Carter, yeah.
No, it's Councillor Clark.
Clark, sorry.
Okay.
I've got my glasses on as well. Yeah.
Okay. What about the public footpath then? How would that be designated? How would that be made obvious that it was a public footpath?
Well, the public footpath actually runs outside the red line of the application site, so it's immediately next to, but there wouldn't be any reason to assume that this development would actually directly impinge on the public footpath.
Okay. The drive down to the house from the road, you have lines on it. Is that like a traffic line, or is it just?
I think it's.
Would that be flat? Would it be steps? Would it be a slope, presumably?
Richard, could I come in here? Because I've looked at the site carefully. Chair, is that okay?
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's two issues here. One is the actual width. It's not actually as wide as indicated on that sketch. This is why we asked for a topographical survey. When I measured it on site, it's very tight. Even the position of the buildings in relation to the public right of way, which is why we wanted the more detailed drawing to show, how large that area is. Could you actually get a vehicle down there and maintain the right of way? It's a lot more constrained than it appears on that drawing. And secondly, we asked for details of the gradient, because obviously it's very difficult to get a vehicle down. If you've got a 1 in 4, 1 in 5 slope, when it's it's very difficult in the best of times, and when it's snowing, obviously people park on the main road. So these issues haven't really been addressed.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. I'm just having a few little technical difficulties here. I've lost all screen sharing now, and I've lost all members. Right. Okay. I'm just getting everybody back. Right. There we go.
Sorry, I've come off the screen sharing now.
All right. Okay. Fantastic. I've just got everybody back. Okay. So we now move on to. So any more questions for officers? No. Okay. So we now go on to objectors. Is that correct at this moment? Do we have any objectors to this application?
Yes.
Now, Sarah Parker.
Yes, I'm here, councillor.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, you have 5 minutes to talk on objecting to this application, Sarah. So it's over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Sarah Parker. I live next door to the proposal at number 22 Clayhouse Lane, having lived here for over 12 years. My husband and I object to the application. This isn't the first time an application has been made, but this application is different to the previous ones, as it's proposed to build up to our boundary fence and intends to remove the trees that border our garden, and will have an impact to our land and our trees. The land will require substantial excavation of at least 7 metres deep. No consideration has been made for the potential impact that this may have to the surrounding land. In our garden, there is an old mill chimney which is capped off and buried in the garden. Our house was built further back than originally planned due to this. Without an engineer's report, we won't know either way if additional support is required. If it is required, it could be in the form of gabion baskets, which aesthetically will look awful and will further reduce the amount of space to build a house on a piece of land that already has limited space. Looking at the space that's stated, that's on the showing in the plans, in policy BE 18.8, it states it should have reasonable privacy. The proposal is a public right of way to 3 sides of the land, which will not make this development private. The plans are not to scale. When comparing the proposal to the existing houses, the proposal looks very small when shown against the existing dwellings. When in fact, both neighbouring properties have 2-storey houses and are smaller than the proposal. Our double garage has been admitted from being shown in the plans, which should have been displayed. It's a detached garage that is positioned against the right of way. This forms part of the boundary and will clearly show there is no room to increase the width of the path. Policy BE 18.5 states new developments which are out of scale or broad design is incongruous when set against existing buildings or the site or existing areas will be opposed. Based on the potential of removing 6 to 9 trees and the design of the proposal and potential requirement for the additional support of the land, the application should be refused on this policy. The land itself is not currently used, however it could be. The land opposite to the proposal is used as an allotment, which has made good use of land. Instead, it's been allowed to become overgrown. The land is opposite the break to the viaduct cycle path, which could be, this piece of land could be made to be visually attractive, but hasn't been given the chance. In the interest of conservation to protect the ecological species in line with policies NE 15, NE 16 and NE 17, it does fall within a wildlife corridor. A variety of species that include foxes, hedgehogs, birds and bats and owls have all been witnessed in and around the land. I do worry that the photographs supplied by the agents don't fully show the bats that do roost in the trees. He's an architect, not a bat specialist. The application requested the felling of 3 trees. Due to our concerns about the impact of the roots of the other trees, we instructed an arborist to carry out an arboricultural impact assessment at our expense. The report shows that to enable the house to be built, 6 trees would require felling, with potential impact of further 3 trees, some of which are our trees. 9 trees in total, all with TPOs in them, all are healthy, mature trees that continue the green space from Clayhouse Park, which is an historical site, up Rochdale Road. We have not given consent for our trees to be affected to allow the proposal to be built. Longer term, the remaining trees, if there is any remaining trees, will cast considerable shade onto the proposal. There will be issues with overhanging branches over the development, which has not been considered. The trees also act as a buffer to the noise and pollution from the busy Rochdale Road. Previous requests to fell the trees on this site have been refused on the grounds of public amenity. Previous officers, planning inspectors have described the trees as forming an attractive feature to benefit all local residents and visitors. In Councillor Greenwood's supporting statements, she states that the last hurdle seems to be the relocation of a refuse bin, which isn't quite. There are unanswered questions about the excavation of land.
One minute left, Sarah.
Thank you. Parking, structural engineers report, the method statement for accessing the land, drainage, that hasn't been mentioned. There's a land drain that runs from the mill pond that runs under this land. Rather than being answered through this process, they've been asked to be included as conditions. I feel these should have been done alongside the application process. Looking at parking policy C3 states dwelling houses with provision within curtilage except where communal parking is proposed. The applicant has submitted an alternative parking solution. This does not fall within the curtilage to the proposal. Highways have stated it's insufficient for 2 cars, let alone 2 cars in a bin store. The applicant has looked for a quick solution. This is submitted after the comments about using the public right of way as a driveway. The applicant has not shown that the land is in ownership, and our personal thoughts have been this has been done to satisfy the planning application and will not be used for this. There is no mention about electrical charging points, which I thought had to be included in new build properties. Parking on Clayhouse Lane.
That's 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any questions from members for Sarah, for the objector? Okay. No one's wanting to ask any questions. Okay, thank you. Not a problem. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, hang on a minute. Councillor Baines.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I had used the little hand on the machine that you don't appear to have come up.
No, I haven't not seen it.
Sarah, did I hear you correctly that you said there was a tree preservation order on the trees and the ones on your property as well?
Yes, all the trees on the land have tree preservation orders on them. In the plans that were submitted, it was requested to fell 3 with replacement planting of 3 further trees. But the consultant that we've used came and measured the land and stated that it would actually require 6 trees to be felled, not 3.
Fine. Thank you. Because reading the report, it doesn't as if it doesn't give me the idea that there is a TPO on this land. Could Richard sort of just confirm whether that's the case or not?
Apologies. Bear with me.
Richard, we've lost him.
Yeah, sorry.
In the description of the site proposal.
Yeah, in the report, I think it's a section of trees and landscaping which refers to the neighbouring tree preservation orders on the group of trees next to that's on page 12.
Yeah, sorry, and then in the sorry, you carry on.
Yeah.
Sorry, Richard. What you said, I just missed what you said then.
No, I was just going to say in the description of development, there's a group of TPO trees to the east of the site. So I think that's suggesting that certainly the trees adjacent to the site are protected.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but not on the site.
It is on the site. Yes, it is on the site. If it helps, I can go in the garden and show you.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to clarify, because it's not clear whether the trees which are going to be cut down have a TPO on them.
In the independent consultant report, it does show in there. I think it's got the tree preservation order reference numbers in it, if that helps as well.
Right. Can we try and establish this, Richard?
Yeah. I'll need to go have a look at the online maps. If there's other speakers, I can be checking the maps whilst other people speak.
Right. Okay. Is there any more questions in at this moment in time for the objector? Councillor Greenwood, you can't ask questions, unfortunately. Any more members? Okay. No. Thank you, Sarah, for your time on this. We'll now move on to Councillor Greenwood, who is supporting the application. Councillor Greenwood, you have 5 minutes. Just bear with us while I try and find the stopwatch again. Or does anybody else have a stopwatch?
I'm doing the timings today, Chair.
It's all right. I've got a stopwatch up. Councillor Greenwood, you now have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Committee. As you are all aware, the applicant has submitted a number of applications regarding this site. Each time is attempted to address any issues that were not compliant with planning legislation. For example, objections regarding whether this site has been formally developed. Calderdale historical maps show a small building on this site. The applicant now has focused particularly on redressing any problematic issues and feels that he's complied with requirements that would otherwise prevent permitted development. As an overarching consideration here is that policies referred to regarding this application are shown to be not up to date. Please note, paragraph 11, footnote 7 of the MPPF establishes that for applications involving the provision of housing, the policies which are most important for determining the application should not be considered up to date if the local planning authority cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites. The current position is that Calderdale has a 2-year housing supply, as shown in the officer's notes. Consequently, it's questionable as to the weight given to the RCUDP policies and the judgment dependent on those policies identified in this application. Therefore, according to the MPPF paragraph 11, section D, subsection 2A states, presumption in favour of sustainable development and the granting of permission should prevail. With reference to the RCUDP policy BE1 and the officer's comments on the application for this 3-storey setback development states, for this reason, the proposed dwelling is considered to fail to respect or enhance the established character and appearance of existing buildings and the surroundings. This site is, as described on Calderdale's planning papers for today, unkept sloping land with brambles and small bushes. In fact, it's quite aesthetically unremarkable and untidy. Viewing the site from Rochdale Road, the large house to the left is very dominant, and this proposed property would not be imposing comparatively or ill-fitting to the street scene. There are 2 4-storey multi-residential developments which were in 50 to 80 metres of this proposed development. On the newest 4-storey development, it is stated on the planning report, it is considered that the design, scale, height, form, mass of the proposed development would remain in character of the area. Within the Greetland and Stayman ward, I believe we should be innovative and open-minded as to where we build much-needed new homes. There are also many properties, both old and new, of various styles in the surrounding streets, so it is not, in my opinion, a style that will not be assimilated into the surrounding area. I am assured that the public footpath will be held securely and fenced off from the proposed property. The footpath will not be lost. The committee notes also refer to policy BE5. It is instructive to note that despite the information in NPPF paragraph 11 previously stated, that the sub-items in policy BE5 refer to public transport routes within the site, traffic calming and reduction measures, reduction of opportunities for crime that highways access respect the local character and free flow of traffic. We submit that this application is for a single residence and not a multi-residential site with intra and access roads, that policy BE5, therefore policy BE5 does not apply. Mr. Harry Lowe, the applicant, also asked me to report that he delivered a further 8 letters of support to the town hall as per instructions posted near the site. Therefore, the weight given to objections is questionable. Finally, I would respectfully like to point out, whilst understanding the current financial stress that the authority is under, that if the committee makes a recommendation to refuse this application, then the landowner has the lawful right under the Town and Country Act 1990, Part 6, Section 137, Paras 1A, 2A, 3A, to serve notice on the authority that they should be required to purchase the site. I quote, this untidy, unkempt piece of land, along with the obligations and responsibility that ownership would bring. If I've got time, I would like to suggest the removal of trees. Incorrect. Tree specialists disagree. The trees are sycamore, Acer pseudoplanatus, a non-native species that have been brought in. They're not indigenous trees, they are sycamore. Okay, and also on all the comments that have been made to object against this, I have explanatory notes on every one. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Greenwood. That was more or less bang on 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions from members to Councillor Greenwood?
I can bring the TPO map up now if it helps.
Yeah, yes, please, Richard.
Bear with me, I need to share screen again. So what I've done is quickly go online and added the TPO map to the PowerPoint. So that's the layout drawing that members have already seen. And the next slide shows the protected trees. What I might do actually is zoom in a little bit on it, and maybe no, that doesn't help actually. Sorry, I thought the aerial photograph might help, but that shows this green area shows the extent of the tree preservation order, and if I go back to the PowerPoint. So the tree preservation order essentially comes, you can see the footpath coming down here. And it's very difficult to tell, but it looks as if the tree preservation order comes into the application site. I think, unfortunately, others have raised some issues about the lack of a topographical survey, and clearly that is complicating this issue around the extent of the tree preservation order, because if there was a topographical survey, that would have plotted the boundary features and the trees more accurately. So I think some of this ambiguity is a result of the plans that we've got before us and the issues that were touched upon by by Mr. DeMarc. But certainly I would say that that looking at the map, that the tree preservation order does go into the site, which, to be fair, correlates with this plan, which shows sort of larger trees within on the edge of the body of the site.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Richard.
Shall I stop the sharing?
Yeah, please, if you could, because I can't see anybody when the full screen sharing's up. Okay, do we have any more questions for Councillor Greenwood?
Yes, I can only reiterate here, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Greenwood. No, it's only questions, unfortunately. Is there any more questions for Councillor Greenwood? No. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Greenwood. We now have the applicant or agent to speak on this. Who do we have? Do we have an applicant or agent to speak? Janet?
It's on your list, Chair, that I've sent you through.
Yeah, all I've got is applicant or agent.
Yeah, that means that there is nobody. There is nobody.
There's no applicant or agent to speak on this. Okay, thank you. Right, members, it's any questions? Councillor Baines.
Yeah, it's not a question actually. I think the officers have got this absolutely spot on, and I would propose that we accept their recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Curtin and Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. And I thoroughly agree with Councillor Baines. I think it's an over-intensification of a small site, which will have a major visual impact on the area. So I'm quite happy to refuse the application.
Okay. Councillor Hutchinson.
I was just going to say much the same and second the
okay. So we have an initial proposal from Councillor Baines. Councillor Baines, we have a proposal from you.
Councillor Baines, Chair, and Councillor Curtin seconded the proposal.
Okay, so Councillor Baines, and that is to go with officers' recommendations to refuse, with a seconder from Councillor Curtin. Okay. Do we have anybody with any other recommendations? No. On that one, then we go with officers' recommendations, and the application is refused.
Chair, you have to have a show of hands.
Sorry, yeah, sorry, yeah. Do we have a show of hands on Councillor Baines' recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, right. On that note, that's refused. Okay, thank you. We shall now move on.
Can we just have a little bit of time to get people in and out of the...
Of course we can. Yeah, not a problem at all.
We'll let you know when that's happened. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, we're all ready. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 2, which is the land of rear of 7 Victoria Drive, North Iron, application number 20//00030/full. Okay. So officer, who's leading on this? Which officer? Richard, you again. Okay.
So hold on, I will share my screen. Apologies. Is that the right one? Okay, can members see the slides okay?
We can.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, 7 Victoria Drive, North Arran, 22 letters of objection, 1 letter of support, 1 representation and comments from Councillor Taylor received. Slide sets out the key issues. Bear with me, it seems to have frozen. So this shows the location of the application site off Victoria Drive, obviously between 2 residential properties. This is the aerial photo from 2012. This shows obviously the existing drive, existing double garage and parking space for number 7, and parking for the new development, and the proposed dwelling cited as shown. This shows the proposed elevation, so conventionally designed detached dwelling. Also in blue, we can see the land that's within the same ownership. So this property adjacent within the same ownership, as is some sort of area of paddock to the rear of the site. So this is the access into the site off Victoria Drive, number 7, number 9, number 7 in the same ownership. So a view sort of further down that drive. And then looking back in the opposite direction, because again, you can see number 7 and number 9 annotated, and the existing double garage, and then turning around, looking at the proposed site. This is the land to the east and south of the site. Properties to the north at Queen Victoria Crescent. So again, looking back up the site, so you can see the double garage that I referred to earlier in the presentation. View towards the paddock to the south. View southeast of the site. View west from the site. So again, you can see the double garage referred to in the presentation. And the final slide again reiterates representations, key issues, and the recommendation, which is to permit with conditions. Again, shall I stay on the presentation in case members want to sort of look at any sort of features or plans again whilst I'm screen sharing?
No, if you could take it down, if you don't mind, Richard, because I can't see anybody whilst the screen sharing's up, unfortunately.
I can reshare it fairly easily, actually.
Sometimes if anybody needs to,
the sharing process causes the sometimes it slows things down, but it seems to be working, touch wood, reasonably okay this afternoon.
Okay. Okay, members, any questions? Councillor Hutchinson.
Could you, thanks, Chair. Could you say a little bit about the foul water and surface water drainage aspect of the proposal, or the constraints that those would operate under?
Bear with me. Sorry, I'm just needing to go back to the report.
I unfortunately can't see Councillor Naeem, so if Councillor Naeem, you're wanting to ask any questions, if you can either add it to the chat box, or you've come back now, I can see you.
Right, so the foul drainage would be via a non-mains biodisc treatment plant. That is it's different to the old sort of septic tank, in as much as the effluent within the tank is sort of agitated, and there's discs with bacteria on them. And the manufacturers of these pieces of equipment will always say that, in theory at least, and I would recommend trying this, that the water that drains out of them could in theory be drunk. I wouldn't. I think it's one of the things which salesmen say. To be honest, I wouldn't recommend trying it. So that's the recommendation for the foul sewage. I'm assuming that would reflect the cost of pumping because it's quite a long driveway, and it's uphill. So I'm assuming that it's more economic to go for the non-mains drainage than it is to install some kind of sort of pumping system to pump it uphill. The surface water drainage since will be disposed of by means of permeable surfaces with roof water taken to a soakaway and grey water storage for reuse. So if we're applying the sort of the normal policy presumption, that is that water should go to soakaways or sustainable drains before actually discharging surface water in particular to the public drain is the less favoured approach. So in principle, the applicant is following good practice around drainage and using soakaways. To secure the details, there is condition number 2, which requires details of the foul and surface water drainage before those works are carried out. And of course, additionally, the foul drainage, I think, would also be looked at by building control.
Okay, and that would include looking at the feasibility of a soakaway for a plot that size.
Yes, yes, yeah. I mean, the applicant has certainly got plenty of land under their control. They own the adjacent paddock adjacent to the site, so they've certainly got plenty of land within their control.
Okay. Any more questions for officers? No.
Yes, please.
Councillor Clark.
Councillor Bellinger, thank you, Chair. It's about the highway objections. One of the stipulations was that the grading should not exceed 1 in 10. It now exceeds 1 in 8. Surely that's steeper than 1 in 10, and therefore not really.
I think I'll refer that to Mr. DeMark.
Yes, well, we have a 1 in 10 is a desirable minimum, we call it. It's, you know, if you can achieve that's the lowest we generally would go to. But we do have like an absolute minimum, which, you know, very difficult circumstances such as this, we will go to that gradient, and that's in line with other councils. So I think we'd find it difficult to sustain an objection really on anything up to that steepness. I think, you know, up to 1 in 8. So yeah, that would be acceptable in this case.
I'm sorry, I don't understand then. I always thought that 1 in 10 was not as steep as 1 in 8.
Oh no, sorry, yeah, 1 in 8 is steeper than 1 in 10. So we generally, I mean, 1 in 12 is what a lot of driveways are designed to. We then say, you know, we can go down. You can go down to 1 in 10, which is like a desirable minimum. But then you can even go down to 1 in 8, which is, you know, obviously steeper by another 20%.
Right.
So
on
that's
the report, you've actually put this gradient should not exceed 1 in 10. And without these details, I would be unable to support the application. And then you have a further comment. The revised drawing indicates that the access gradient would be a maximum of 1 in 8.
Yeah, so it's steeper. So I mean,
no objection. I don't understand.
Apologies. It wasn't very clear. It should have said. I mean, there was a discussion with the applicant, which obviously we don't provide all the details on the comments, where we said, you know, can you achieve 1 in 10? That's our, you know, we would like you to do it no steeper than that. But basically because of appeal decisions, you know, we find that up to 1 in 8 inspectors will generally allow. So we do allow applicants when it's very difficult with the gradients and where it will be very expensive to do lots of earthworks and lead to an unusual site with lots of, you know, gaping walls, that kind of thing. We will go down to 1 in 8 as the steepest. So again, there's not really that narrative in our comments. It should have been clearer, but 1 in 8 is acceptable in this kind of location for a single dwelling, for a larger development. But for a development of this size, with the steepest gradient is towards the rear, not on the driveway. Therefore, we'd find it acceptable.
Thank you.
Good. I can just share the slide again, just to illustrate Mr. DeMark's point, if that will help members, just as a reminder. So this is a photo from the site looking back up the driveway. Obviously, it is an existing driveway and serving a garage already, and obviously you can see there's a car that already parks there. And I think Mr. DeMark was making the point that the steeper part of the driveway, so you can see it's between 7 and 9, it's relatively flat, and then it's the steeper drop. You can see where it sort of drops away, where the wall steps down, and then looking back in the opposite direction, you can see where the steeper part of it is. But I think, again, just adding to Mr. DeMark's comments, I think it's relevant that it is an existing drive that already serves parking spaces, and it is only one property that's been added to the sort of totality.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions for officers? No. Okay. We shall move on to the objector. We have one objector, which is Jane Nicholas. Jane, are you with us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Jane, you have 5 minutes. Just bear with us 1 second. I'll take you on 5 minutes from now.
Right, Jane Nicholas. I live at number 11 Victoria Drive. Starting off, you should have some sheets, members, that I've sent through information. I'm starting off with drainage. Where is the biodisc going to be located? On the initial plans, the biodisc was to be located in the middle of the paddock area, but then plans submitted to address an extra parking area for property number 7, Victoria Drive, showed that the biodisc had moved nearer to the house and northern boundary, next to sycamore trees shown on the initial plan. I've contacted Kingspan, one of the leading manufacturers and installers of biodiscs, to find out site location guidance. Locating near significant vegetation root systems can be problematic as roots will go towards the water source. The bottom paddock is surrounded with large mature trees with considerable root systems. The biodisc should not be located within 5 meters of a boundary. On the second plan, it shows it within 2 meters and 10 meters away from a watercourse. Second point, inadequate access. Second parking space incorrect for number 7. The shared driveway access agreement plans held by the owners of number 9 show the driveway split, and also the start position and angle to land owned by both number 7 and number 9 in the lower field. This plan does not correspond with the plans submitted by number 7 in relation to ownership. I mention this as the parking space to be created at the side of the garage is not correct in size. On the second plan supplied by Mr. and Mrs. Porter, the minimum parking space area should be 4.8 meters by 2.4 meters in size. This would mean that the parking base would protrude past the front of the garage and restrict access into the site, leaving an opening of approximately 2.75 meters. See the pink line on the plan supplied. Although this may be a civil matter, it is a very important issue because lorries would not be able to get onto the site. Outside lighting and security cameras. Will residents' privacy be seriously considered in relation to outside lighting and security cameras on the site? Residents would like the details of all external lighting and camera installations on the site to be approved. This is to ensure the surrounding residents' privacy is retained. Number 7 have recently installed new security lighting and cameras. These are affecting the privacy of houses 5, 9 and 11. And maybe a site visit might be needed to look at the problems there and what problems could be, what problems there might be in the future. Councillor Caffrey was supposed to be speaking after me, but I don't know whether he's about. Is he?
Yeah, Councillor Caffrey is here, but you've still got over a minute left. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. This is a picture. I don't know if you can see this picture. This is a picture of the site before the trees were chopped down. This is the top section.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't see any pictures, Jane.
Can't you? No? Right.
You've got 60
I'll
seconds.
do that one then. There's been a considerable amount of trees that have been chopped down in the top section of the land, leaving hardly any trees there. Obviously, there's considerable root systems still there. So a biodisc, the location of it, it's disputable where it could go, actually, within the site, even though it is quite a large site. To think what else I could say.
Okay. If you've nothing else to say, that's fine. Is that we can stop at that if you want, Jane?
I mean, the main points is that we want lighting and cameras. Oh, I've lost. Sorry, I've lost you.
You've only 10 seconds left. If you've nothing else, Jane, that's fine.
That's fine. Okay, that's fine.
We can go to questions now. Then.
Right. Okay.
Don't go away. Members, any questions for the objector? Councillor Curtin.
And it's not a question to the objector, just a really for clarification from Richard. I believe that lighting and camera positions and things like that will be an issue in the future for environmental health. Is that correct, Richard?
Well, I think it fits into more of a grey area, unfortunately. I think environmental health can deal with lighting where it becomes a statutory nuisance. A statutory nuisance is a very high level of disamenity, and I don't think sort of domestic lighting would ever fit into that category. CCTV cameras. I couldn't answer that question with any sort of degree of certainty. I mean, increasingly people do fit CCTV cameras attach them onto their property, and I would have to assume that it would come under sort of antisocial behaviour if it was being done in a way that was causing issues of sort of privacy and concern for neighbours. But I couldn't answer that with certainty. I mean, it's not. I think in terms of planning conditions, members could in theory put conditions on relating to CCTV and lighting, but it's not something that we ordinarily do with planning permission.
It's not the norm, but I think it's needed in this case.
Because those are, the planning system exists to deal with sort of really issues of public amenity rather than sort of matters of sort of dispute between neighbours. So it's not, obviously ultimately it's a sort of a matter for members, but it's not generally a condition that we would put on. And clearly it is fairly standard for people to add sort of lighting to their gardens and put CCTV cameras up.
Okay. Councillor Curtin.
As to CCTV cameras, through you, Chair, with regards to CCTV cameras, anyway, clearly there are regulations in place already anyway to protect privacy, so people would need to comply with those regulations in any case, wouldn't they?
Yes, as I say, I'm getting off my territory there in terms of professional knowledge, but and maybe it might be a question for the legal officer, but I think it would probably come under sort of antisocial. I think if you installed cameras that were sort of obtrusive or invasive in terms of your neighbours, I think that would be covered by antisocial behaviour. But maybe it might be a question to ask if the legal officer could come in on that. And apologies if I dropped him in.
Yeah, I think Richard, like you, I'm straying into territory which is a bit beyond my normal comfort zone. But I think what Councillor Curtin might be alluding to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it'd be the data protection issues. I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
I think that would be something which they need to observe, or that could be found to be, some form of contravention there. And the same, Richard, I think you're quite right as well about the antisocial stuff as well. And I think in terms of from a planning aspect, I know sometimes when the police are consulted, a big thing is just security by design, and there might be issues there with lighting there. But it's not usually the place for planning to control that. And the reason for that is because it's a principle that conditions to be necessary, they can't be duplicated by the statutory regimes. So I hope that helps. I can have a look at more detail if you want me to, whilst people are talking.
I'm quite happy with that, Chair. I mean, I think there are regulations in place already, like Marcus has said, under data protection laws to protect people's privacy there, and likewise with the with lighting, especially flood lighting, these floodlights that go on and off, automatically, especially if there's something like 500 watt or very bright lighting. There are regulations there in place now to control that.
Okay. Councillor Hutchinson, you've got a question for the objector?
No, it was just chipping in on the discussion about lighting, because I have seen quite a number of applications where conditions have been put in place on the lighting scheme requiring approval before as one of the conditions on the approval.
Yeah,
I think it's needed in this case because there's no lighting down the bottom of the driveway. So how are they going to, you know?
Sorry, Jane. Can we have? Is there any more questions for the objector at this moment in time? If there's no, sorry, Richard. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I mean, Councillor Hutchinson's right that we do put conditions on relating to lighting where we feel that there is clear scope for disamenity to be caused. So if it was an industrial development or a school, for example, where there were playing pitches and again you have the high power light that is bright enough to play certain sort of ball sports. So yes, we would, but we probably wouldn't do it with a single residential dwelling where people would generally be just installing sort of domestic level lighting. It's the sort of commercial grade lighting which has the scope to cause people a serious nuisance.
I mean, what size of unit do you?
Can I just interrupt? Can I suggest then that this is something that we can come back to determine at the end in questions, comments, and proposals? And if we've no more questions for the objector, that we actually move on to.
Can I just ask? Have you seen the plan that I've supplied?
We've not been able to do, Jane, because obviously with time scales with planning.
Okay. Yes.
Within a certain time to our planning officers for us to be able to see it within the application at the planning meetings, unfortunately. So if we've no more questions, members, for the objector, we'll move on to Councillor Caffrey, who has 5 minutes. Thank you, Jane, for your time.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Just bear with us 1 second, Councillor Caffrey. I'll get the stopwatch up. Councillor Caffrey, you now have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. This application, actually, you referred to Councillor Taylor. I think Councillor Taylor called it in the event of a refusal. The permit was it was called in by the council itself, I think, because it was sensitive. So I'm just representing the residents. They've asked me to call them today, but it wasn't called in as such. I can see the report says that it's sensitive, and I can see why. That planning's got its own reservations about approving it, really. The main matters of concern really are there's 22 letters of objection, and it's only one property, which is quite a significant number of people, really, in my experience, for one dwelling, and only one letter of objection, which I think came from outside the borough anyway. But I think the main thing about this is it's a greenfield site, and technically it's a back garden, which actually is a back garden, which wouldn't normally be permitted. And reading the planning report, it seems the only reason it was permitted is because of housing supply. I stand to be corrected on that, but that's how I read it anyway. And I've mentioned this to residents, and they're saying really, and I understand where they're coming from, that what difference does one house make to the housing supply in Calderdale? So they were a bit it was a bit of a vague reason for allowing it, really. And also, I think the other concern is that, as you may be aware, under the local plan, a lot of this area, a lot of the green belt in this area has been earmarked for, or will be, or maybe if the plan's approved, for development. So we're going to have a substantial number of developments in and around this area if we lose all this green belt. And it's quite dense as it is. So what they're saying is why does this one house make such a difference to the overall scale of things? I think the other thing is, the third thing is that applications to build on this land have been refused before because it's greenfield. And they've also been refused at the back of other properties in Victoria, in Victoria Drive in the past. So this decision just appears to be a bit inconsistent, that's all, with previous decisions. And they're sort of asking, well, why has this one been singled out when the others have been refused? Some of the objections in the report have been dismissed on planning grounds, which is, you know, a planner's decision. But there's a difference of opinion on some other things, such as wildlife and that sort of thing. But I think one of the biggest contentions is this biodisc. I've never heard of a biodisc personally, so I'm certainly not an expert on them. But what I have seen about them is about the effect on adjacent properties, which, you know, obviously there are some around there, and how this stuff seeps into the ground. Now, I don't pretend to understand it, but what I've read of it and what the report says, the actual application isn't very clear on how these work either. So I think it should be something that's looked at in more detail, really, because it could be quite polluting. I think one of the other serious points of objection is the access rights. And you see the pictures of how narrow that driveway is. And to get this, and I recognise it's a civil matter, I recognise it's probably a civil dispute, but to get wagons down there isn't going to be easy. And if that ever gets blocked or anything like that, it might be worth sort of revisiting or reviewing the highways report. I understand what they're saying now, but in the future, if that gets blocked, there could be more vehicles on the street. So really, I'm really asking Planning Committee just to consider whether this development is actually appropriate, given that it's inconsistent with previous decisions, really, and the access and the question marks over the disposal of sewerage.
We've got 1 minute left, Councillor Caffrey.
I've had to say thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Okay. Members, any questions for Councillor Caffrey? Richard?
Can I maybe just respond to a couple of the points? I mean, the issue around greenfield development, obviously our Calderdale unitary development plan is a good number of years old. It's adopted 14 years ago, and reflects a government planning policy position at the time that set a presumption against development of greenfield sites. With the National Planning Policy Framework in 2012, that has now changed. So that general presumption against greenfield sites being developed, and I'm using the word greenfield rather than green belt here, but that general presumption against greenfield sites being developed doesn't exist now. So it does mean that there are sites which might have had sort of refusals a number of years ago under the previous planning policy regime that are now recommended for approval. Just picking up on the point of the drainage, obviously, as I've said, there is a condition on a suggested condition that recovers details of the Fowland surface water drainage. So that would ensure that that the final details were approved by the relevant people within the council. And if that means moving the biodisc, then that would be one option. Alternatively, if the non-mains drainage ultimately proves not to be feasible, then the applicant would have to spend the money connecting to the mains drainage, which would be a financial burden, but it is ultimately a fallback, and the planning condition as drafted would allow that to happen.
Okay. Any more questions, members, for Councillor Caffrey?
Can I just say, Chair, I said back garden development as well as greenfield development. It's a combination of both.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Caffrey.
Yeah.
Right. as we have no more questions, we'll move on to the applicant or agent. Applicant Stacey Porter. Stacey, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Stacey, you have also 5 minutes.
Thank
Just bear
you.
with 1 second from now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stacey Porter. I am the applicant and I speak in support of the application. Firstly, I would like to commend your officer's report to you. I believe it deals with all the relevant material planning considerations and also deals comprehensively with the objections raised, including concerns for on-street parking and access for emergency vehicles. Myself, Mr. Porter and our family have lived in the area for 15 years. We bought number 7 10 years ago. We are not developers and the proposed development is for us to live in and will provide additional space needed for our family. It is not a for-profit development and we hope it can help in some small way meet the need for housing within the Calderdale district. In respect of objectors' comments, I would also add 1. Drainage. As mentioned, a satisfactory scheme will be put in place considering foul and surface water and drainage. Regards the watercourse, this is a substantial distance away from the proposed site. 2. Comments regards the shared drive mentioned. This is of course a private matter between number 7 ourselves and number 9 our neighbour. The access is not a driveway for parking, but shared access to the garages and land beyond for both houses. 3. Trees being cut down previously were mentioned. A bit of background here may help. We bought number 7 in 2009. The property had been vacant for 10 years, not maintained for a further 10 years before that. The previous owner had planted trees and not maintained them. Some of the trees were damaging structures of the drive, garage and walls. Some were rotten and dangerous. Gradually, between 2009 and 2016, some trees were removed, mostly by reputable tree surgeons. The trees that were removed were not under TPOs, and our adjoining neighbours on both sides were in agreement with removal, something they had wanted for many years due to reduced sunlight and visibility. 4. Objector mentioned lighting and cameras. If any were to be installed, all would be domestic and follow regulation. We certainly have no intention or desire to be a nuisance. Finally, regards Mr. Councillor Caffrey's comments, just like to add that no applications for this site have ever been submitted previously. Thank you very much for your time and for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of an application which, if approved, will mean a great deal to myself and my family. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Stacey. Don't go away. Any questions, members, for the applicant? Okay. There's no one wishing to ask any questions. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you, Stacey, for your time. Okay, we will go now to questions, comments, or proposals. Councillors? Okay. With no questions. Any comments or proposals? No. Councillor Baines?
Yeah, this two similar properties have been rejected under in the same area as this, adjacent to this site. Whilst I don't think there's any reasons to refuse, mainly because of the lack of housing in Calderdale, that goes against it. But I think, on balance, I feel there's nothing sort of solid there will say, yes, this is good and should go ahead. So I would suggest that we refuse it, and it's all around the grey areas which have been mentioned in the report. There's nothing actually that stands out that says this is a good proposition, and it is a garden which certainly up until a few years ago, developments in gardens was against, wasn't permitted. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay.
We're refusing.
So you're putting forward a proposal, Councillor Baines, to refuse on what grounds would that be? Marcus, I think you might come in here at this point. Is there a...
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think what I should sort of remind members today is that in terms of your decision making, the starting point is that planning applications should be approved if they are in line with the local plan. And you've obviously read the officer's report, and their view is that it does satisfy those policies. However, unless there are material considerations which dictate otherwise. So I think it's worth just putting that spin around rather than saying there's not really a strong reason to grant it. Well, if it's in line with the policy and there's nothing there to go against that presumption, that's how you need to look at it, I think. I don't know if Richard wants to add anything.
Yeah, sorry, Richard. Yeah, anyway.
So just to take that a stage further, members be aware, because we've talked about this on a number of occasions, that Calderdale is a local authority where the tilted, what's colloquially called the tilted balance applies, and this relates to the National Planning Policy Framework and the way that the NPPF expects councils to approach decision making on planning applications where essentially the existing policies are out of date, and additionally there isn't a 5-year supply of housing, and essentially it's the presumption is that planning applications will be approved unless the disbenefits clearly and demonstrably, I think that's the language used, clearly and demonstrably outweighs the benefits. So I understand the point Councillor Baines makes about the application maybe sort of sitting in the middle somewhere, but the way that we would be expected to take the decision and the way that a planning inspector would view it would be that essentially the balance has been tilted in favour of granting planning permission, and an inspector would only support refusal if the objections clearly and demonstrably outweighed the presumption that planning permission should be granted.
Okay. Councillor Baines, are you still wanting to go ahead with your proposal to refuse?
Well, it hasn't been seconded yet, but there's been no other proposition put forward, and I came forward because nobody seemed to be going either way. I'd start the discussion off.
Okay. Do we have a...
Councillor Hutchinson's raised his hand.
Okay.
I mean, having heard the discussion, I am very struck by the adverse impact that lighting with the wrong scatter. This would be a building that is that's situated off the current road network. It's in an area of open fields that don't have any buildings for some considerable distance. The applicant has said that they don't wish to be a nuisance, so I would expect it should be very easy to agree a lighting scheme where that is actually reviewed prior to going ahead. So if it's possible to add a condition for a lighting plan to be reviewed as part of the ongoing process, then I would be prepared to propose that we go with officers' recommendations.
Right, okay. Richard?
Yes, so I mean, Councillor Hutchinson has identified a reason why, as I said previously, we don't ordinarily put such a condition on small residential planning permissions, but Councillor Hutchinson has identified a reason why he feels this case is different by virtue of the particular siting of the development. So essentially that it's then a matter of, if members have provided or Councillor Hutchinson's provided a legitimate reason for such a condition, so it's just a matter of sort of members judgment in terms of whether
We've lost you, Richard. You frozen.
Sorry. I was just saying that that Councillor Hutchinson has provided a reason why such a condition would, in his opinion, be justified in this instance, and that's a legitimate legitimate stance to take. So it's a matter of members judgment really, but I can understand it would be a legitimate reason for putting on such a condition if members were concerned about that point.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Talking about the drive and the shared drive, apparently it's 10 feet wide. But if you look at number 9, I think it is, the one next door, sharing the drive, that has a tiny porch coming out. Presumably that would have to be demolished for the lorries to get down that drive. How would you make them do that?
Shall I mean, it's ultimately for the developer to be able to carry out the planning permission if planning permission is granted, and if that means you have to unload lorries on the road or before you get to that porch and put stuff onto sort of forklift trucks or onto smaller vehicles, then that's what the applicant will have to do. It might make it more
seems impractical. Yeah.
But clearly you can't just demolish your neighbour's porch. That's
there needs to be some agreement there, doesn't there?
There either needs to be an agreement, or they would have to sort of use a smaller vehicle or a forklift or something just to take the materials the final stretch down the drive. But that's
you have lots of happy builders. Yeah,
I think it's down to the developer and the neighbour, isn't it, to decide on how they conduct the development, I suppose.
Yeah.
Councillor Naeem.
Yeah, I just wanted to second Councillor Hutchinson's proposal to permit with condition B.
Sorry, Councillor Naeem, I don't know if anybody else got that. You were a bit like Norman Collier there for a moment or two.
Sorry, I'm still saying that I wanted to second the resolution by Councillor Hutchinson, which is to permit with the condition that is high.
Okay.
So, is that an additional condition to include details of the lighting scheme?
That's right. That's right.
Right. Okay. So let me get this right. So we've got a proposal from Councillor Baines to refuse officers' recommendations. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Baines' refusal?
No.
No, no. Okay, and then we have a proposal from Councillor Hutchinson, which has been seconded by Councillor Naeem on that one. Now then, this is where Marcus, where I need your support on this one, or Richard. I should know this. I've been doing how many years I'm planning. So, with two proposals on the table. Do we go for a vote on the proposal with the conditions?
I don't think Councillor Baines's was Councillor Baines's.
Wasn't seconded, I don't think.
No, it wasn't seconded. Sorry, Chair. There's
No,
only one
so
proposal.
Okay.
If Councillor Baines's motion was seconded, that's
Right.
fallen.
So that's fallen. So we've got the one motion on the table now, then one proposal on the table, which is from Councillor Hutchinson to go with officers' recommendations to permit with conditions regarding the lighting, and we've got that seconded by Councillor Naeem. So members in favour? 2, 3, okay. Against? 1. Abstentions? 1. Okay, so that's passed. That's been carried, and that goes with officers' recommendations to permit. Okay, thank you. Can I request at this moment in time that we have a 5-minute comfort break, just so we can rest our eyes, grab a quick drink, and come back? Yeah, everybody happy with that? Janet? Okay, thank you. Back in 5 minutes.
We're back live, guys.
Right, fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's just that item. Last item on the agenda today is 10 Hillview, Homefield, Halifax, which is 20/4/0471/HSE. Okay, Richard.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Over to you.
Hold on, I'll put it onto the full screen mode. Can members see the presentation? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so first slide sets out 4 letters of objection and also comments from Councillor Lambert as ward councillor and the key issues. This shows the location of the site, so it relates to existing semi-detached property off Hillview. The aerial photograph. So this shows the existing plans. So it's semi-detached, I suppose what you might semi-detached property. There's obviously some form of existing small ground floor extension. So you might describe it as a dormer bungalow, possibly. These are the proposed plans. So there's an extension at ground floor to the side and rear, and then the 2-storey element is just to the side. So this is the roof plan. I'm indicating with the cursor the roof plan of the ground floor extension. So this is the proposed elevation, so the proposed front elevation. So essentially it's carrying the 2-storey element of the existing property through. The side elevation, so this is the new 2-storey element of the extension, and then the single-storey element to the side and projecting to the rear. The rear elevation, and the side elevation to the garden. So you've got a kind of cut through of the existing property, and you can see the French doors in the side of the extension. So just to sort of recap, those doors are the doors which I'm indicating there with the cursor. So this is the boundary of number 12, the rear boundary of the site. This is the existing rear elevation in part. So you can see that these two photos effectively join to one another. So the two-story extension, this structure would effectively be incorporated into the new extension. The roof would come across, continuing the roof line of the existing property, and then it would also extend backwards a single story into the garden. So this is a view from the driveway. You can see the adjacent property with a landing window and a side window. Rear boundary of the site. Rear boundary looking towards the fairway. And a view along the rear boundary. So this is the view that you would get effectively through those French doors which I identified. So those would obviously be looking towards a fairly well screened boundary. So looking at the front elevation, so as described, the property will be extended to the side at 2 stories and then back at single story. So again, this is, you can just orientate yourselves. This is number 10 and then number 8. So this is the driveway to number 10, and number 10 itself is just out of the shot on the left-hand side. So again, number 10, number 12, extension to the side and to the rear. And the final slide sets out obviously representations, key issues, and the recommendation, which is to permit. Would members like to see any of the slides again?
No, I think that's a no. Okay. Thank you, Richard. Members, any questions for officers? Councillor Hutchinson and Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit confused in the rear elevations that have been shown. I mean, they don't indicate the dormer that has already been erected there, and then so presumably that will persist. Then you've got the ordinary fall of the sloping roof, and then you'd have a 2-story extension jutting out with, is that in line with the dormer, or is that more symmetrical with the front? It's quite hard to tell from the plan.
Yes, it might be best if I share screen again to try and explain it.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if we look at this side elevation, obviously you have this element coming out, and in a way that is almost a kind of dormer, this element, because you got this kind of sort of asymmetrical shape as the property currently is. If I just show the as it currently is designed, the property sort of comes down to effectively just a single story level. at the back. So the roof behind this dormer will, as you can see there, it sort of, the roof sort of comes down like that, and this sort of box is effectively a dormer. So you can see the eaves line of the dormer. That line there is the line there of the dormer, and then these two windows are at first floor level, roughly where I'm indicating with the cursor. Has that answered your question, Councillor Hutchinson?
Yeah, I mean the aesthetics, it doesn't answer the aesthetics, but it kind of explains what's being proposed.
Yes, I mean, obviously it's, I think from the aesthetic point of view, it's on the rear elevation, so it'd be difficult to argue that it has a sort of a street scene impact in the way that clearly that would if the property was flipped around the other way.
Although it is extremely visible from quite a large number of the properties on the fairways.
Yes, it's visible from surrounding properties. Yes, yeah. Shall I stop the sharing yet?
Yeah, unless, I mean, Councillor Clark, you're next for the question.
Yeah, could you please leave that elevation on?
Yeah.
It does seem a very big extension, which is almost the width of the existing house. When you take into consideration the front, that is almost half the extent of the existing house, and then you've got the side smaller development. I agree, but nevertheless, it seems very disproportionate. And I thought there was a regulation that you could only have an extension up to a third of the existing property.
I think,
which is a lot. This is a lot more.
In members will sometimes, in fact, I think we had an application before the lockdown. It was because we visited it, where the extension to the property was within the green belt, and obviously we had that sort of particular issue, and the consideration for members was whether or not the extension was proportionate. With sites like this, which are in a built up, what we call a primary housing area, there isn't any policy presumption in terms of the size of extension that people can have. It's a matter of judging the extension on its visual impact and the any impacts in terms of amenity, loss of privacy, or overshadowing or overbearing effects. So there isn't any limit on the on the proportionality of an extension. I mean, in terms of this extension, if you look at the two-story element, obviously this is the. Sorry, I might just share again if that's okay. Oh no, I am still sharing, aren't I? Sorry.
You are still sharing, yeah.
Still sharing, sorry. This is the party wall between the two semi-detached properties, and it's probably adding, very approximately in terms of the two-story element, it's probably adding about 35% to the width of the property. This element, the single-story element, is obviously pushed back from the front of the property, and certainly appears quite subordinate. So I understand Councillor Hutchinson's point about the dormer window, and I suppose the only point I'd make is that sort of dormer windows on the back of sort of bungalow type properties, they are fairly common throughout Calderdale, and whilst you can see it from residential properties, that's more a matter of people's views than it is the effect on the street scene. And the loss of a view isn't a matter for the planning system. Yeah, and I think that's unless there's any other questions, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. You've made the point in the report that there aren't any other properties within that street or within the surrounding streets actually that would look anything like this. So it is a new, it is a significant change to the street scene as it is. And I know I take on board your point about the view from the rear, but if we could look at the aerial view, we've got an aerial photograph near the start. It does show how, you know, an impact, the street scene, it does have, you know, this would have a significant impact on the view from the rear of quite a large number of properties, homes. I take that the windows are far enough away, they maintain the separation, but it would still be a great increase to the mass of the building and out of keeping with the other buildings anywhere else in that development, as far as I could see.
Richard, or any more questions for officers?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Sorry, Richard, did you want to come back in at that one for council?
I mean, obviously, you know, as set out in the report, I don't think the rear elevation is so obtrusive as to justify refusal of the application, because essentially you are talking about the views from a number of properties, views from private land, private land, rather than views from the public highway, from what you might call public vantage points. And with it meeting clearly with it being of a sort of scale that I don't think you could say is overbearing, I think that one would be a difficult one to argue at appeal, probably.
Okay. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. When we talk about overbearing, are we actually bearing in mind that plot is actually quite a lot higher than the other houses that it's affecting? Well, and so the top, the height of the second story, of the two-story, would really be quite high compared to the neighbouring properties on the fairway. As you can see, I mean, the one below is quite a bit further down, but the ones behind on the fairway are also further down. So the extension would be massive.
Yes,
if you look at the one where you can see the drive and you can see the other houses on the fairway. No, not that one. The one that shows, you know, it's already quite imposing to the fairway. When it gets another two-story extension and that, it will be massive.
I mean, the extension is no higher than the existing property.
No, I'm not saying it is, but it is moving across and closer.
Mm. And clearly the fairway is not, I mean, I can see that number 8 is at a slightly lower level, but I don't think the level of, I mean, looking at this photograph, I don't think the level of the fairway relative to this property is so great as to.
Well, I have walked past it. To me, it looks quite imposing.
I mean, compared with some parts of Calderdale where you deal with, you know, very, very significant levels differences between properties.
Well, that's not really a fair thing, is it? Because it's not in other parts of.
No, but the levels here aren't sufficient to really significantly aggravate its impact on the surrounding properties. There are, you come across cases sometimes where the significant difference in levels is such that you need more separation than you would ordinarily require. I think it'd be very difficult to say that the difference in levels between fairway and number 10 is such that you need to be sort of greatly expanding the normal separation distances, and the difference in height between number 8 and number 10 is only no more than a metre or so from the photos.
Do we have any further questions for officers at this stage? No. Okay, we shall move forward. We have, I don't think we've no objectors, but do we have a comment from Councillor Lambert? And we've no councillors, but we've got I think we've got a comment from Councillor Lambert. Sorry, Janet, you're on mute.
I'm not aware of Councillor Lambert getting in touch with me, Chair.
Right, okay. I thought I'd seen something somewhere. Right. No, no problem.
There it's in the comments.
Yeah, just a report, Chair, tonight.
Right, okay, not a problem. So we've no objectors, no councillors, no applicant or agent. So at this stage, we can basically go straight to questions, comments on proposals. Have any comments or proposals, members, on this application? No. Anybody like to propose? Councillor Baines?
Sorry, Sonny, can I come in, please? Can I read Lisa Lambert's objection?
Well, I think we've all had the opportunity to read it.
Okay, right, fine.
So if everybody's read the objection, yeah, because it isn't obviously in the paperwork for us all to read beforehand.
Oh no, yeah.
Yep. So, okay, Councillor Baines.
But it is on the application online.
It is, yeah. It's all there for, like I say, for people to see beforehand. So yeah, it's same as any application that comes before us. Any comments from members are on there for us to see beforehand before we make any informed decisions. So, Councillor Baines, did you have a proposal you want to put forward?
Yeah, it's I do have sympathy with the objections to it, but I think on balance, our planning officers have got this one right again. So I would move that we accept officers' recommendations. Okay.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Baines's proposal? Councillor Curtin.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be quite happy to second that, and I don't see too many issues with this application.
Okay, so we have a proposal to go with officers' recommendations to permit. Do we have any other further proposals? Councillor Hutchinson.
As I've already indicated, I do think that this would be a substantial change to the street scene because of the massing effect. And although there's a lesser weight given to the rear view of the properties, I do think it's doesn't produce a homogeneous design. So I would propose to refuse on the grounds of B1.
Okay. Do we have a seconder then for Councillor Hutchinson's proposal to refuse? Councillor Clark, are you seconding that?
I second that, please.
Okay, so we have a seconder. So we'll go for the vote. So we have vote on the, do we go for the refusal first? Do I get that right? Okay, so we have a vote on the refusal against councillors' recommendations, officers' recommendations. So we have 3.
The amendment first, because that was the second one. Is that not right?
Yeah.
This was the amendment. This was the amendment.
Yeah, for refusal.
Yeah, for refusal is the amendment, Councillor.
Right. Is that correct, Richard?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're waiting for the amendment. So voting on the amendment for refusal. And that was, okay, 1, 2, 3. And 4 officers recommended.
No, hang on, we've got to take a second vote on that now.
Do we take a second vote on that? Sorry, Councillor Curtis, it broke up.
We would vote. You voted on that, but you haven't given us the option to vote against it.
Right, okay. So we vote against. Right, okay. So members voting against that recommendation for refusal. Okay. Do I get a vote at this stage? With there being, yeah. So I also vote on that, against that. Okay.
Against what?
Against the recommendation for refusal. Yep. So now we take a vote on.
Hang on a minute. Hang on, that's 3-3 now, so you can use your casting vote, can't you?
I can. So I now use my casting vote to go with officers' recommendations to.
No, you use your casting vote to refuse that recommendation.
Okay.
Reject
I use
it.
my casting vote to object to the recommendation. There we go. Right.
So the amendment falls, and it's now the substantive motion, which Councillor Baines's motion that you're voting on.
Right. So we now go to Councillor Baines's motion to go with officers' recommendations to permit. So all those in favour?
Seconded by myself.
Seconded by yourself. I vote on that one, and I use my casting vote again to go with officers' recommendations.
Hang on, we haven't got that yet.
3-3.
That's 3.
That's 3. Right.
All against. Next is the next one. Those who vote against.
Right. Those against.
Tell me what?
It's Councillor
Against what?
Officers' recommendations.
Right. So those against officers' recommendations to permit. It's 3. Okay. So it's 3. So it's 3-3 against.
Now
so
you use your casting vote.
Now I use my casting vote to go with officers' recommendations to permit. So that's 4-3. We'll get there in the end. All right. Are we there now?
Yeah.
When we're sat around the table, it's easy. We just put his hands up and right. So on that, the application has passed. It's gone with officers' recommendations to permit. Yeah. Okay. And on that note, I think we're finished. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.